live from the new sports betting capital of the world.
You might be from Texas, but I'm from New Jersey.
Benny Ricciardi is here to break down the day's betting board for you.
Let's go, Jerry. Go!
Taking a first look at the day's bets, it's time for the FTN Betting Show. Welcome to the FTN Bets Cast for Thursday, June 16th here at FTN Bets, sponsored by our friends over at Sleeper. Sleeper is the fastest growing fantasy platform today with millions of players, and now you can play in their new over-under game. It's super simple. So first, in any sport, you're going to choose two or more players that you like and pick whether they're going to go over or under their listed total. So, for example, the number of points in basketball tonight, maybe the number of assists, three-pointers, turnovers, anything that you see there that you can take a chance on whether it's going to go over or under. Then you're going to choose an amount of money that you want to put into the contest. And if you pick correctly, you can win anywhere from 2 times your money all the way up to 20 times your money if you go 5 out of 5 and get them all correct. But the main reason I'm excited about the over-under game on Sleeper, it's the only app where I can join my buddy's contest and we can all play together. It has a built-in group chat where you can see what I'm playing, I can see what you're playing, and all of us can see what the guy who won 2 or 3 days in a row in our group is playing. So stop what you're doing now, download Sleeper, play their new over-under game, have some fun with your friends, and make a little bit of money in the process. On your mobile phone, you can join our listener group by going to sleeper.com/FTNBets, and Sleeper will automatically match your first deposit up to $100. So again, look down in the description of this podcast, sleeper.com/FTNBets, and you'll get that $100 match on your first deposit. There are terms and conditions that apply, so see Sleeper's terms of use for those details. Today is Game 6 of the NBA Finals. The Golden State Warriors are up 3-2. It is heading back to Boston. Boston is favored. This is about as close a series as you can get in terms of the fact that either one of these teams could win. What it hasn't been a very close series in terms of is the final scores of these games. There has not been a single game as close as this series is. And, you know, going back to Boston for Game 6 with them favored here, which we'll get into in a second, as close as everybody says this is, as evenly matched as these two teams are that everybody keeps talking about, there hasn't been a single game in the series that wasn't decided by at least 10 points or more today. And the reason I mention that is we're about to talk about the spreads, but we were having an interesting discussion the other day about alternate spreads, you know, amongst the FTN Bets chat and all that. You could have played and gotten plus 300s, plus 400s throughout this series on taking the team that won at like plus 9.5. Now, again, every single game in this series has been decided by double-digit points, which is interesting. Boston won Game 1 by 12, Golden State by 19 in Game 2, Boston by 16 in Game 3, Golden State by 10 in back-to-back games here. So you could have cashed on some big numbers there. So people are like, well, then, yeah, we got to go bet on 9.5 here today. I think that is one of the worst moves, actually, now that we start thinking about it, because if you would start in any series and think about how many of these games are going to be decided by double digits, you're probably not going to say all 7. It's probably going to be something like, it's probably actually going to be a low number, like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3, or, you know, maybe 4 if it's a real lopsided series or something. But to already have 5 games that were decided by double digits between two teams that everyone says are so evenly matched, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me here. So, yeah, I guess if you want to go on the trend and go play plus 9.5, I mean, by all means, you know, good luck with all that. But for me, I think this game's going to be a lot closer, which is why I really don't have a lean on the side here. I think the number has moved a little bit to around where I think it should be. So anyway, the number on this Golden State Warriors Boston Celtics game opened at 3. It's moved up a little bit to 3.5. Now, I have said since the beginning of the series that I thought Boston on a neutral floor was slightly better than Golden State. And with Boston being slightly better than Golden State, you would expect them to be favored at home. I would have thought maybe a point, you know, 1.5, so maybe a 4, 4.5, which are the numbers we saw earlier in the series. Today, for the most part in the market, we're seeing a lot of -4s and +4s. So I think the number is probably right where it should be here. You can still get Boston -3.5 on Caesars at -110. That is probably the best number out there in the market. I don't think it's going to be there all day, but if you can still get that 3.5 at -110, to me, that's the side of this game that I want to be on. but there's not a lot of value there, right? Like I said, I think the Celtics are a point to a point and a half better on a neutral floor. On their home floor, it should be 4.5, something like that. It's at 4 right now. So really there's not a lot of there. If you can get it at 3.5, you're getting a whole point. It's not bad. That's probably where I would be. But again, it's not something I'm looking to back the trucks up on here. So now let's talk about the total here. The totals in this game, in this series, 228, 195, 216, 204, 198 in games 1 through 5 there. Let's see. What can we say for that? Well, game 1 was the one where the Celtics had an explosive fourth quarter and every 3-pointer they threw up went in. So, that's definitely a little bit more of an outlier game there. The other 3 games that have been played in, or the other 2 games that have been played in Golden State, though, 195, 198, I don't really know if that's the outlier. I do think the total should be somewhere in the low 200s here is probably where I would put it. Like kind of like game 4 was at 204 the last time they were in Boston over here. The problem I have with that, though, is, you look at the 2 games that were played in Boston, they were 2 of the higher scoring games other than game 1 when, everything kind of went nuts. The Celtics did play better at home. They averaged about 107 points at home versus 101 on the road in the games in Golden State. So again, they were, a little higher scoring. So the score should be a little higher. And the total, the reason why I say this is the total opened at 210. I'm sorry, it opened at 211. It is down to 210 though. And that's kind of around the lowest it's been all series. We've had totals like 212, 214, 213, 216 was the high, I think. But they've been in that like mid to high 210, 216 level. Now we're down at the lower level, and some of them have even cracked below the 210. I think there's a couple overs we could play. Yeah, MGM has it at 209.5 here today at -115. It's 210 -110 is kind of the consensus number everywhere else. Everywhere else has it at, 210 with the standard juice. You can play an under at 210 with a little bit of juice, like down -108 on FanDuel. I think they honestly just did that to be the one that pops in a lot of these screeners here. Whereas, everybody else has it at that 210 -110 level. I think that's a pretty good number. I think I'd rather play the over on it if I was going to play. And let me give you my reasoning here, right? Yeah, I know the last 2 games, the last couple games, we've only gone over, and, game 3 and game 2, game 4, game 5 have all gone under and like barely over 200 points here. But the 2 games that were played in Boston, we did get an average of 210 points in those 2 games here. Again, this game's back in Boston, to be under 210, to be able to play an over on that number, it's not all that crazy here. The other thing is, like, this is one of the lowest totals that we have seen so far throughout the series. I want to play unders when the number's starting to really creep up and get higher than what the expected total was for the series. The total for the series shouldn't really move that much, right? Like, nobody got hurt. Nobody is, there's really nothing that makes you say, oh man, there's been something materially different than what I thought in game 1 here. The total shouldn't be that much lower when you come to game 6, unless there are some injuries or something along those lines happening. Yes, there have been a couple series where the totals have tailed off as well. So maybe a little bit lower, but we're not talking like 6 points lower, right? Like 216 all the way down below 210. That's a pretty big move from where it's been at the high to the low here. So I want to play overs when the number is down here at the low, and I want to play unders when the number starts getting up to the higher end of the range. This is one of the lower ends of the range here. So to me, I know it seems counterintuitive, but I actually think the over is the better way to play this than the under here today. So I like the over 209.5 at MGM at -115. But if you have to play it at 210, -110 on basically every other book out there, I don't really hate that either. So now let's talk about some of the player props here today, whether player props we're going to be using over on Sleeper or some of the player props that we're going to be using, for our sportsbook bets here today. I had a really tough time finding things I liked on Golden State. I really did. I think some of the numbers on Golden State are around where they are. I think some of the guys are right around where they are. Like, I was really trying to find at least one number that I liked here, because I don't like all my numbers coming from one side, but I think all my numbers are going to come from the Celtics side tonight, all the ones that at least I wound up putting any money on. So let's start with Golden State anyway, though. I mean, like, Steph Curry, 28 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. Like, last game, he went over the assist mark. He had been playing under it for basically the rest of the series up until that last game where he had 8 assists. maybe he was distributing a little more because he didn't shoot very well. 0 for 9 from three-pointer. Obviously not what we're used to seeing out of a guy like Steph Curry, and not something that I think is going to carry over either. I mean, he had a bad game. Guys have bad games. It happens all the time. I think he'll be back. Every other game of the series, he's knocking down, 5, 6, 7 threes. I don't think that, he's super banged up or anything. He came back and scored 40 points after that, little scare he had. I think it was in game 2 or so, or game 3, whatever it was. So again, I'm not really too worried about any of that stuff. I think Steph Curry is going to be fine here. I think that the shot will drop for him. And if the shot is dropping, maybe he does go back to being a guy who's looking for his own offense a little more and, not really giving it up. It also has a little bit to do with the way the Celtics were playing him. They did kind of try to get the ball out of his hands a little more, attack him on the drives, and kind of double him a little more on the perimeter. And yeah, all those things may have contributed to it, but at the same time, again, it still means it's a number that I'm a little bit iffy on. The same thing with his rebounding number. You don't think of Steph Curry as a guy who grabs a ton of rebounds, but he actually has had a lot of games where he's gone over that 6 mark this year. Surprisingly large number, as I was kind of like, skimming through it all. I mean, he's even had some double-digit rebound games, which makes zero sense to me how he got that many. But, it is what it is, and that's the way that it has worked out. The 28.5 points, I mean, if he gets hot, then yeah, that could be. I mean, he could have 28.5. We've seen him have that in a half, right? Like we've seen him do, come out and knock down like 6 or 7 threes and, basically get like over 30 by the beginning of the third quarter. Like again, it wouldn't shock me. It also wouldn't shock me though if the Celtics really kind of do a lot more of trying to get the ball out of Steph's hands and trying to make these other guys beat him. Like make Andrew Wiggins beat you, make Klay Thompson beat you, make Gary Payton III hit jump shots in the corner and a banged up Otto Porter have to, score 10 points in order to beat you. I don't think that's the worst strategy for Boston. And you know what? I do think it is a little bit of what they tried to do last game, which is why we saw other guys have to step up and score. It's 2 of those guys that have had to step up and score are Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins. And, we've seen the numbers kind of come up on them too. Like Klay Thompson, we were playing unders earlier in the series, and it actually did work out a little bit. Last game he had 21, so he went just over the 19.5, 20.5 total that they had. So he paid some people off there. He had one game where he had 27, I think. I think he had 20 last game. So they were 18, 19, something like that. He's had a bunch of games where, his number was anywhere between like 18.5 and 20.5. And he's finished with like 18 to 20 points, right? So it's a fair number. And when you have a fair number, there's really not much you can take on that. So I couldn't really get myself to pull the trigger on either side of the Klay Thompson over or under play because he's been playing in that range. That's been the range where his prop numbers have been. That's been the range that he's been playing in. So, there's just no value with doing anything like that. And then Wiggins, you can't even find Andrew Wiggins rebound props. And where you can find them, they're just like they're juiced to the max right now. And I mean, understandably so. The guy has been just absolutely cleaning the boards with that smaller lineup out there on the floor where they take Kevon Looney off for a little while and use guys like Porter or Peyton or, even Jordan Poole for a little bit at times on the floor, along with like Draymond and Steph and Klay. So he has really stepped up his rebounding there. And that's been one of the things in this series that, that has kind of helped turn it around the last couple of games. He's not really a huge points guy, though. Like, it's not like Andrew Wiggins, even with these monster rebound games and everything else going on. Like, he's not putting up 30-point games. He's playing well to put up 20, and his prop number is, in the high teens already. So it's like, do you really want to play over on a guy who has needed to play what most NBA fans will tell you that Andrew Wiggins has played very well in this series. So in order to play very well and barely make your props, like it doesn't give me a lot of faith that he's going to go over these by a lot and that this number is way too low. But again, if he also has had to play really well just to get there, like, is that really something you want to put your money on? Like, do you want, again, I'm not saying that Andrew Wiggins won't have a good game, but he's had some pretty great games, I guess, in the last couple, and he's barely, kind of cleared this hurdle. Are you expecting another pretty great game from Andrew Wiggins? Because if he has just a good game, you're probably not going to get the overs here. So I think these are good numbers too. And this is my problem. I can't, I really tried so hard to find a good number on Golden State. Do you want to take like Gary Payton or Otto Porter over like 6 points? I mean, basically what you're saying is I hope these guys each knock down 2 threes from the corner and that's how they get there. And maybe they do. Maybe they get some wide open shots and they knock them down and today's their day. We've seen Grant Williams do that. We've seen Derek White do that. We've seen we've even seen these two guys kind of do that a little bit throughout, the playoffs. There's always that guy who, gets a couple open looks. PJ Tucker's been that guy before in years past and series past, like, guy who gets a bunch of open looks and knocks down a bunch of shots and all of a sudden scores 12 points. But that same guy also comes back the next game and goes like 1 for 8 and scores 3 points. So I don't want to bet on either one of those things. I don't want to bet on Looney now, as much as I like Looney, and he's been productive out there on the floor, but I want to bet on Looney when they're going with the smaller lineup a little bit more. So, then Draymond Green. I mean, what do you do with Draymond Green, right? Like the problem with Draymond Green is, yeah, he could have a triple double, but he could also have a 6, 7, and 6 game in like 36 minutes of action. And you actually thought, hey, Draymond played pretty well there. I saw 2 steals and a block, and was in the mix in a lot of things. Played good defense, but for like fantasy and betting purposes, when you're looking at the actual stats, like I think he's like 7.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, and like 6.5 assists today. Like, yeah, that's a Draymond Green stat line right there. 7-7-6 with 2 steals and a block, and you'd be like, yeah, it's a Draymond game. Like that, that's who he is. So like to bet an over on him or to even bet an under on him, it's just like, I don't want to bet an under on his points because he could have 4 layups and get 8 points. He could do that fake come around handoff to the 3-point shooter and, get the big guy leaning that way and then just turn around and, go to the basket. We've seen him do that where he uses himself like a dribble handoff screen and then winds up with the layup on the other side. Like that's a Draymond play, but like how many times does he make that play in a game? Maybe he finishes on a missed rebound under the basket and he gets one and goes up. Hey, he's going to get 2 points there too. But like, how's he get the other 4? That's the thing. Is it going to be, Steph Curry driving to the basket and dumping off to him where he's down low, wide open, and he gets a dunk out of it? Probably something like that. Maybe he hits a 3-pointer. Maybe he gets fouled at some point, hits a couple free throws, but it's like, it's not really great. It's not really the way you want it all to go. So, anyway, let's talk about the Celtics side here. There's actually all the plays that I like today are actually on the Celtics side. One of the things I like about the Celtics, we'll start with Jason Tatum real quick, but we're not even going to get into some of the numbers. The numbers I want to talk about here are minutes played per game right now. 41, 44, 43 in the last 3 games for Jason Tatum, right? And this is an elimination game. So do you think Jason Tatum's going to play less minutes in an elimination game than he did in all the other games that preceded it that weren't an elimination game? No, I mean, this guy's going to try to be out on the floor. He's probably not going to play the full 48 minutes. They're going to try to get him a minute or 2 here or there, but this is not a guy who's going to be sitting on the bench for very long. Maybe a couple minutes, like steal a minute at the end of the first quarter, or 2 minutes at the beginning of the third quarter or something like that. I mean, the beginning of the second quarter, then, I don't know, a minute or 2 at the end of the third, a minute or 2 at the beginning of the fourth. Like Jason Tatum's going to be on the floor for 40+ minutes in this game. So you got to like the overs there. And I think that's what's drawing me to the Celtics here is that for the most part, I like almost all the overs on the Celtics with one exception, which we'll get into in a little bit here. But I like almost all the overs here because it's a do or die game, right? Like in a do or die game, you don't really mess with your rotation gets shortened. You're going to put your studs out there for as much as they can be out there. You try to steal a couple minutes for them here or there at different points in the game. But, that the 2 points that you give up by taking a Tatum off the floor for 2 minutes there might be the deciding 2 points in this game. So, as a coach, especially in these kind of games, and even as a player, right? Like the players, the star players in these games are like, I don't want to go home right now. My season. I'm right here. I can see the brass ring. The brass ring is 2 wins away here. These guys are going to want to be out there on the floor. So the Jason Tatums, the Marcus Smarts, the Jaylen Browns, especially those 3, that trio, I'm expecting to all play around 40 minutes, if not more tonight. And like I said, Tatum, 43, 44, 45, maybe even like, he's going to be out there on the floor. And that's really what we're looking at here is like, we're looking at the Celtics as a team that you should be looking for the overs for, especially on those core guys. Like the other guys, Al Horford is probably going to be out there more minutes than normal, but it's not going to be 40, but it'll be more than normal. Like he's probably going to be on the floor quite a bit. Robert Williams, maybe Derek White. Like this might be a game where, Peyton Pritchard minutes are going to be the minutes that suffer, or, I don't know, maybe Grant Williams minutes, like those, not those secondary pieces so much, but like the guys that are like 8, 9, 10, 11 on the depth chart, if they were getting minutes consistently in other games, that's where the minutes kind of get sucked from. The 6, 7, 8 guys are pretty much safe. Maybe not for the normal like ceiling type minutes they could play, but they're going to still get into the game at least a little bit. But you're going to get more minutes from these starters. So Jason Tatum over 27.5 points is one that I kind of like. It's actually minus 115 on DraftKings, right? So I think that's a pretty good price. minus 130 on Caesars. So you're saving 15 basis points there. Every other book that we work with in the US is minus 120 to minus 127 on this. So I do like the over on 27.5 points for him here. I think he's going to, honestly, I think he has to kind of take it on himself. He was a little passive in some of the other games. And, I mean, listen, this is an elimination game. You're going to go out there. You're going to do what you can. I expect to see double-digit three-point attempts from Jason Tatum today. I expect him to take 20-plus shots. I think he could get to 27.5 points. He's going to be going to the basket hard, getting some layups as well. So, getting to the free throw line. I like the over on Tatum points. I also like the over on his rebounds, but this is not one that's available on Sleeper. And honestly, when I looked, I almost couldn't believe the numbers, but I guess I can. I mean, he did have double-doubles in each of the last two games. The double-double number is real low today. It's only like plus 155. I would not play it over there. I think there's a chance he gets one, but that number should be closer to the 200 plus range. Like that's a low number. The 7.5 rebounds right now has been getting hammered since they posted. They posted this at minus 110. I don't even think it lasted 45 minutes, and it was already at like plus 130. It's up to plus 140 to plus 150 on all the books I'm looking at here right now. FanDuel at minus 140 is the best price. Unibet's 150, minus 152. Like, again, you can't really take that number. If you're trying to build a single game parlay with like a risk-free thing and you're trying to juice it up a little bit, that's a good number to throw in there. That's like that at minus 140, minus 150. That's probably the only way you can use a number like that. So we'll see how that happens and let that go from there. So let's see. Next guy up, Jaylen Brown. I'm going to talk about Jaylen Brown a little bit here today. Jaylen Brown is the one guy I said whose points number I actually don't like. 24.5 is the number over on the Sleeper app. That number to the under is minus 115 on BetMGM, which I think is a pretty good number. It's minus 125 to minus 135 somewhere else over there. He's only gone over that 24.5 number in one of 5 games that he's played so far this year. This series. Only one of the 5 games they played in a series has he gone over that 24.5 number. So I like the under on Jaylen Brown. And even that game that he went over, he only had 27. So it's not like he's, it's not like, oh, yeah, he had 41 night. Like, no, he barely made it over that one game that he did. And the other 4 games in the series, he's been under it. It's not like he hasn't scored 18, 21, 24. I think he had barely missed in one. So it's not like he hasn't scored at all. He just hasn't had those big games. And that number's a little elevated. So I don't like that number. I like the under on Jaylen Brown. This is one that I would be looking to play on Sleeper. But the one that I like even more than that on Sleeper is the over on Marcus Smart. So we talked about this before game 1, cashed it in game 1, lost it in game 2. Cashed it in game 3, then I kind of stopped playing it after that, and I don't know why, and it's kind of annoying me that I did. In 4 of the 5 games, Marcus Smart in this series has had at least 18 points. In the 2 games during the regular season against Golden State, he averaged 18.5 points. The one game he didn't was that game where he had 2 points in game 2, and everybody was like, oh, Marcus Smart sucks. But Marcus Smart has cashed the over on his points in 4 or 5 games this series. It's 15.5, and he's had 18 or more in 4 of the 5 games. So there's a little bit of a cushion there. This is a series where this is a matchup that we have seen Marcus Smart do well in. He's shooting the ball more. Again, go back to what I said at the beginning with Tatum and Brown already. These 3 guys are all going to be playing 40-plus minutes here tonight. So I think it's a very good spot for Marcus Smart to go out there and do his thing. You can get this at minus 110 on Caesars right now, which I think is a very good price. Definitely one I'm going to be throwing into the bet tracker today over on FTN Bets, which if you guys haven't signed up for FTN Bets now, you can get over to FTN Bets, use promo code Benny right now. You can save 20% off. It's really for the football season, but honestly, even if you get in now, you still get the end of the basketball season, the end of the NHL season, MMA action, PGA action, everything else that we got going on there. Probably be some NBA draft bets going up in there too. I have not looked at the NBA draft. I am not the guy to follow for NBA draft bets, but I'm sure there is somebody on staff who has been searching and finding some value over there. So there'll probably even be some bets for that up. I know we got some NFL futures going up. So lots going on over at FTNBets.com. Remember, secret promo code, not really a secret, but use Benny and you can save 20% off there. So anyway, with Smart, like I said, minus 110 on Caesars, really, really good price. And, normally I like to look at the things that are like minus 130, minus 140, because again, that's an implied probability, 56, 58% of that thing happening. And those are the things we like to use a lot on the Sleeper app. But I am just so enamored with the Smart over 15.5 that I'll take it, even though I'm seeing it on the books at like minus 110 to minus 120. Like I said, if you have the sports books, definitely one I want. But if you do have Sleeper, or if you are in a state where you could play Sleeper, here's the play of the day for Sleeper. Here's the way to do it. Here's the way to make some money. So you go over down in the description to sleeper.com/FTNBets. You join our group. By joining our group, you're also eligible to put in $100 up to $100 deposit and get a 100% match on that money up to $100. So I always tell everybody, if you can afford $100, put the $100 in. That's how you get the max bonus. You want as much free money as you can get. Putting in $100 will get you $200 to play with. And here's what I would do with it. I would put it on Marcus Smart over 15.5 points here today in that game. And I would put it on Jason Tatum over 27.5 points. You put those 2 point totals together for two guys on the Celtics that'll probably play a combined 80, 85 minutes here tonight. And if you cash it, the payout on it is going to be $600. So $100 out of pocket. They give you $100 in bonus money. You put that $200 on these two guys going over. Marcus Smart scores 16 or more. Jason Tatum scores 28 or more. You're going to get $600 in your account, 100 out of pocket, 600 in your account, plus 500 odds. That's how you get it right there. It's the easiest way to make some money right now. So get over to sleeper.com/FTNBets and check that out. And that is going to wrap it up for our Game 6 breakdown here on the FTN Betscast. Hopefully the Celtics can pull off a W today, because I'd really like to do this again on, I don't know, I think it's Saturday or Sunday, something like that. So for Benny Ricciardi, signing off for the FTN Betscast here at FTN Bets.
Live from the new sports betting capital of the world.
You might be from Texas, but I'm from New Jersey.